Notice the order of the forces breaking into the Sephardic synagogue in the Neve Dekalim. At the head of the team is a Shin Bet agent wearing an orange shirt and a big knitted yarmulke. In the center is Uri Bar Lev. Next to him is Zambish in the blue hat and orange ribbon. Next to Zambish is Tzviki Bar Chai in the white hat and green ribbon. One of their rabbis didn't manage to get into the synagogue. Bentzi Lieberman, in the orange shirt and green hat, opens the locked door for him from the inside. The rabbi goes in, Bentzi closes the door, and goes back to his seat in the front row of the synagogue. Although they had the key to the synagogue, the army pretended that the soldiers had to break into the fortified synagogue. The soldier removes the glass from the synagogue door. One pane of glass was enough to make the break-in look convincing. Now they open the synagogue doors, which weren't locked in the first place. The expulsion forces move in.
לא להיכנס, אני אומר לך. צא החוצה.
בסדר, לא להיכנס. לא להיכנס.
חבר'ה, לא להיכנס. חבר'ה, לא להיכנס.
They didn't want the cooperative break-in into the synagogue to be filmed.
תלווה אותם החוצה. תלווה אותם החוצה.
Notice how they break into the hall where the protesters are being held captive. The Shin Bet agent goes in first. He stands at the entrance, facing the soldiers. Now the first soldiers burst in. But the evacuation doesn't begin yet. Zambish and Bar Chai go in after the first soldiers. They pass the soldiers and sit at the head of the protesters. Now the evacuation begins. Of the thousands of people in the synagogue, the soldiers approach Tzviki Bar Chai and take him out first. Just a moment ago, he came into the synagogue as part of the expulsion force, and now he is the first to be expelled. If not for this Jew who couldn't hold his peace in the face of this shameful expulsion, their show might never have ended. If the protesters had joined this man, the evacuation would have got entirely out of control. The Shin Bet agent goes into action. He picks up Bentzi Lieberman, who is sitting in the front row, just in case. Bentzi sees that no one is going to help him. Everything is back under control. Bentzi goes back to his seat. Not one of the thousands of people there joined the man who fought the soldiers there on his own. The soldiers beat the man and drag him violently out of the synagogue. The commander wants to continue the evacuation, as agreed upon in Uri Bar Lev's briefing. He points at the person whom he wants the soldiers to evacuate now. The soldiers approach the man with the same violence they just used to drag the other man out of the synagogue. Uri Bar Lev yells at the soldiers to stop using violence. When he is unsuccessful, he orders the commander to stop the soldiers from using violence. The commander tries to calm the soldiers who are pulling the man by force. This is the man with the blue hat and the orange ribbon, Zambish. The commander has to shake the overwhelmed soldier until he lets go of Zambish. Zambish picks himself up and goes back to the side of the expulsion forces. From here, he directs the evacuation together with Uri Bar Lev, Ze'ev Heber, the man who runs the Yesha Council, General Secretary of the Amana Foundation, which funds the Yesha Council. Zambish, who is considered to be the father of the settlement enterprise, now directs the violent evacuation of the synagogue. evacuation was a rare opportunity for us to see who these people really are. We saw their true face. The press did everything in its power to erase these moments from the public consciousness. They saw to it that no one would see this footage. Rabbi Shlomo Aviner, who was put in charge of the women, managed to hide his connection to the evacuating forces. When he tore his garment, that was the signal that the resistance to the evacuation was over. Before the spies turned into the implementers of the expulsion, they were the greatest fighters for settlement in Israel. They led the settlement enterprise in Judea and Samaria. What happened to them? How did they turn into our enemies? They say that we must obey the law. To them, the law is an entity that must always be cherished and respected. To them, the law is above the Torah, above morality, above everything. To them, the law is God. Perhaps the most important point of this story is that the public had nothing to do with it. The public was prepared to disobey every law in order to stop the expulsion. The public came in droves to Kfar Maimon against police orders. The public put its life aside. The public came to Gush Katif in defiance of the law. The public came to Kisufim Road to fight the law of the government. The public stayed in the Gush even though it was against the law. They try to tell us that the public opposed the crusade, but that is a lie. The holy public did everything in its power to resist. The public has learned the lesson of the expulsion well. The very heart of the crusade is still before us. The great battle for Zion is at our gates. We will not let the spies get away with it again.